How's it going, everyone? My name is Max. The major claim that I'm refuting today is that animal testing helps save lives. And my opponent's secondary claims include animal testing has shown advancements in human medicine, animal testing has shown advancements in animal medicine, and lastly, a majority of products with chemicals are tested on animals before being marketed. Alright, so let's dive in here. Response to secondary claim number one. The evidence my opponent offers from 1796 stating that the first vaccine was ever created through animal testing is outdated and lacks procedural explanation. So the example states the history of the first vaccine rather than the advantages of the testing on animals to develop vaccines, and it doesn't go actually into a whole lot of the procedure there. This kind of stays like relatively surface level. Now the issue with the reasoning is a failure to offer multiple instances of animal assistance in vaccines. So my opponent offers one instance that fails to show a consistent production of vaccines through animal testing. So if there's not multiple instances here, it's possible that the vaccine that was developed could be a one-time fluke incident. There's a lack of evidence to back it up. But the testing for the vaccine had more to do with human testing rather than animal testing. The control sample for the vaccine was taken from a human and transplanted to another human. So the disease was only obtained from the animal. None of the testing was actually done on the animals, it was just obtained. So moving on to secondary claim number two. The first example given in point A, which states that vaccines for rabies was created with the use of animal testing, tells a story about Louis Pasteur, who developed the first effective vaccine by basically taking a rabies-infected rabbit's spinal cord and pretty much putting an injection into someone's skin. Kind of crazy if you think about it. But it really only shows that the materials were gathered from animals. It doesn't state that it's absolutely necessary that the materials come from animals. If they were made alternatively available, I'm sure they would have used those. So the example offered, it showed, let's see. So yeah, if it was possible that they developed the vaccine without actually gathering the materials, they would have used the alternatives. And in the point B of the same secondary claim, it talks about the definition of anthrax and the vaccine for anthrax. So it's Pasteur gave 25 animals 2 shots of anthrax vaccine, and after he gave both rounds of these animals, he injected live bacteria into 25 other animals that had not received the vaccine. The 25 that didn't get the vaccine died, the 25 that did survived. But the problem here is that the vaccine was developed to cure a disease for cows. By default, the vaccine has to include animal testing. The relation of the point B to the main claim is irrelevant. The testing done to develop the vaccine was not done to save human lives, but instead it was done to prevent further spreading of a disease within animals. So the examples offered under this secondary claim are not applicable to the main claim of animal testing helping to save lives, human lives. Okay. And moving on to secondary claim number 3. The example given does not explain or give any evidence of cosmetics or pharmaceuticals that have been tested on animals. So the third claim here is that a majority of products with chemicals are tested on animals before being marketed. She shares an example of cosmetics testing is usually focused on ensuring that a product does not harm a person's eyes or skin. And the way they do that is that they test it on animals. But the example merely just restates the secondary claim by stating that cosmetics are tested on animals for safety, and the example doesn't give any evidence to actually support the claim. So the reasoning used to support the claim fails to show how animals are essential in the testing process, and specifically the example that's given is the drug retinol, which is basically used in like acne medications. The disadvantage there is that it makes your skin susceptible to UV light. So they test them on animals to see the side effects. And but the testing for retinol was also actually tested on humans, so I did a little bit of research into that. And they actually do a lot of the testing with chemicals done on cell and tissue methods. So now that technology has advanced to a point where they can do laboratory studies on these chemicals and how it affects cell and tissue cultures, that's mostly how they do the testing. Animal testing in regards to pharmaceuticals and like topical creams are actually done all on animals. So all on cell and tissue culture, so it's not really done on animals anymore. But lastly, I just looked into my opponent's bibliography here. I just wanted to state that one of the sources used is aboutanimaltesting.co.uk, and I feel that that source is pretty biased. When you pull it up, it doesn't give the pros and cons, it only gives the advantages of animal testing. So I feel that that's not really an unbiased source to use for this argument. But yeah, that's what I got.
All right, well, you followed the organization pretty clearly. On the first point, I'm not exactly sure that you get a lot of impact from discussing the 300-year-old example here that we've got on the development of the vaccines and challenging the absence of the procedure in regard to that. I don't really think that that was the main point that the advocate was presenting. I do think that there is a good criticism suggesting that because there's not a diversity of examples of animal research being used to develop vaccines, that may suggest it's a one-time thing. I think that's an interesting reasoning press. I don't know that it would be helpful if you had some evidence to suggest, for example, that research on animals had never or infrequently results in these kinds of outcomes. And I know there's data like that that would have maybe made that argument a little bit stronger. As it is, it seems like you've spent a lot of time on the issue without accomplishing much except talking about an example, like I said, that's fairly old. You acknowledge it's old. I mean, in essence, so why are we spending time on that? If there was no other evidence on that particular point, I think that's a better argument to be making. On the second point, in essence, your whole argument on the second point is everything on the second point should be excluded because basically it's all for the benefit of animals, and the advocate's claim is about saving lives. I don't remember if the advocate's claim specified whether they were human lives or not. If it did specify human lives, then I think you've got a very legitimate point here. Although anthrax is potentially dangerous to human beings as well, and I don't know if there's such a thing as a vaccine against anthrax for human beings, but there might be treatments that have been resulted from the research. This is kind of an attempt to take a reasoning point on the argument, assuming that that's what the advocate's claim was. I don't remember it well enough to be able to say that that's what was being talked about, but it was pretty clear in the advocate's claim that they didn't perceive that as being something that was problematic, that they thought that it's more a generic benefit of animal research that's being discussed here, and the whole second point, in fact, is all about the benefit to animals. Then you kind of suggested, why did they have to get it from animals? And I'm thinking to myself, well, you mentioned the materials from animals. I'm going, well, where are you going to get the rabies from to do these tests with? I don't know if it doesn't come from animals, where it comes from. It's one of those things that's a little bit strange that you have made that argument without any evidence to suggest there's an alternative available. Now, on the third point, you did suggest some alternatives are available, and I thought that was probably the stronger part of your argument, except there's no evidence on that. It's all asserted that we have these alternative testing methods and that we don't really do this research on animals the way we did once upon a time. I'm going, that's a good argument. Where's the evidence that proves it? I don't hear a citation on that, and that I thought was a little bit problematic. All right, thank you.